Hello, welcome. Thanks everyone for joining tonight. We're going to get started here in just a few minutes and give some folks some time to join us. Alrighty, well, I think we can go ahead and get started. Again, hello and welcome, and thank you all for being here this evening. My name is Leah Barber, and I'm the State Director with Solar United Neighbors here in West Virginia. And tonight I am joined by my colleagues, Henry McKay and Fatima Ghani. And so I'll give them a chance to briefly hop on and introduce themselves.
Hey, good evening, everybody. This is Fatima Ghani. I'm in the Go Solar team and here to facilitate Leah with the presentation. And hopefully you guys have a great evening and go back with some good information in hand. Thank you.
And I'm Henry McKay. I'm the Heartland Regional Director for Solar United Neighbors. I'm joining you all from Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, and I hope you learn a lot about solar tonight.
Awesome. Thanks, guys. Okay, so we are probably all very used to Zoom by now, but we're just going to go through a little Zoom 101 and housekeeping. And so step one is to join the audio. And so access to the mic and speakers, you can do that by joining. You're welcome to also dial in by phone if that works better for you. And also, if you have a question during any point in the presentation, you can please submit them in the chat box. Be sure to ask them to all attendees and not just panelists. And so that way, everyone who's viewing the webinar can see what others are asking. They may have the same question as you. You are also welcome to use the raised hand feature as well. And that is located on the toolbar at the bottom of the page. And so you're welcome to put your hand up at any time. I'm going to pause at a few different points in the presentation, and so we can unmute you and you'll be able to ask your question. I will say that we are recording this webinar, and we will be sure to share a link in the days to come. So if for any reason that you need to bug out or want to revisit anything that we touch on today, or if you'd like to share with a friend and help spread the word about what we're doing here tonight, you're welcome to do so. I will also be sure to post the link to the co-op website, and you can view it there too. And so that is our Zoom housekeeping. And before we dive in, I'd like to take a minute to tell you a little bit about who we are, introduce our partners for this new co-op, and also give you a brief history of our organization, so that way you have some context of how we got to now and how the co-op process came about. And so Solar United Neighbors, or SUN, is a membership-based 501c3 nonprofit. We currently have programming in 12 states and in DC. We organize around solar policy issues. We are not a solar installer. In fact, we are vendor neutral. And in addition to expanding solar access through our work on policy issues, we focus on consumer advocacy and community outreach, as well as organizing these local solar co-op programs like this one. We work in very close cooperation with our partners on the ground to make these local solar co-ops a success, and we contribute a lot of our success to their support. So without further ado, I'm going to give a big shout out to our partners with the Tucker, Randolph, and Upshur County Co-op. For this round, we are partnering with the West Virginia Environmental Council, with West Virginia Rivers Coalition, West Virginia Highlands Conservancy, the West Virginia chapter of the Sierra Club, and West Virginia Citizen Action Group. And so I am very excited and just as grateful to be working with these partners to help spread the word and to promote this new co-op. So who is Solar United Neighbors, and what is our mission? Our mission is to help people go solar, join together, and fight for their energy rights. And so we help people go solar in one of two ways. And so either through our co-op model, or if you're outside the co-op boundary, or we don't have an active co-op in your area at the time that you're interested in going solar, we have an awesome Go Solar team who you just met. And we can help you go solar on a one-off and kind of case-by-case basis. And so we've helped homeowners and businesses, municipalities, nonprofits, farms, houses of worship, and the list really just continues to grow. And another aspect of our mission is we help people join together, and we do that through events like the Solar 101 info session, through solar tours and happy hours, and as well as, fighting for our energy rights together. So we bring people together for advocacy and organizing around solar policy. And Solar United Neighbors provides people with the resources that they need to effectively advocate for their energy rights. And so our focus on consumer advocacy and community outreach is really born out of how Sun got started. And Solar United Neighbors began as the Mount Pleasant Co-op, and that took place in Washington, D.C. back in 2007. And so you'll see here this beautiful family pictured, our founder, Anya, and her family. And so her son and his friend saw the movie An Inconvenient Truth and came home and told Anya that they were really interested in going solar and that they felt like it would be a good choice for their family. Anya agreed and looked into it and quickly found out that going solar was a little bit more complicated of a process. And so she dispatched Walter and Diego out into the neighborhood, and they went door to door, and they enlisted the help of about 50 neighbors. And they were really able to draw on one another's expertise and untangle the complicated process and nuances that come with going solar. And so, that's like cost and, equipment, different taxes and permits, regulations, the billing, sales pitches, terminology, all kinds of things. And so it took the first group 2 years, but eventually 45 homes went solar together. And after that, Anya started getting calls from people all over the country wanting to organize similar co-ops. And so in the 15 years since then, we've grown to have members in all 50 states. And we've helped over 6,500 families and businesses and others who I mentioned in a previous slide go solar. And that translates to 53 megawatts of installed capacity. And we've offset over 739,000 tons of carbon dioxide emissions. And these are numbers that we are really proud of. And so we are focused on building a more equitable energy system through distributed generation, where the benefits are directed back to people in the communities that they live in. And rooftop solar really achieves this. It promotes local investment, creates local jobs, and brings control of the energy system back into our reach. This is especially important in West Virginia. West Virginia ratepayers are constantly burdened by increasing rates and rising energy bills, and are often paying an outsized portion of their income on these electric bills. And local solar power generation helps to insulate people from these rising costs, and actually allows people to save money for decades into the future. And so we're working toward a new energy system that everyone can participate in, one that is fair and equitable. And now I'd love to share with you how we have realized these benefits here in the Mountain States since we have started solar co-ops back in 2015. And so over 160 people have gone solar with Sun since that time. And that translates to 1.24 megawatts of installed capacity and 3.3 million invested in local solar, which stimulates the local workforce and creates jobs. $5.4 million in energy savings over the 25-year lifetime of these systems, all which can be redirected back into the local economy. And so this slide here just like really quantifies the benefits that I had just touched on. And so what we're going to cover today is we're going to go through this in 3 different parts. And the first part that we're going to focus on is solar technology. The second is solar economics and financing. And then the third will be how solar co-ops work. Okay, so what we're talking about today is solar photovoltaic technology, or solar PV. In which this is still like a majority of the market. There are other solar technology applications like thermal technology, such as for like heating a pool, but it's just a small percentage of today's market. So we're talking about photovoltaic. And this is the technology that converts light energy into usable electricity. And so a solar panel, which is also known as a solar module, is comprised of these little blue solar cells that you see there. And they are responsible for doing the work of converting sunlight into energy that can be used for electricity. And so these are silicon-based cells. They're all wired together to form what's called the panel or the module. And these modules are encapsulated in tempered glass. They also have a back sheet, and then they're framed in aluminum framing. And so all the other stuff that I just described is there as a protective measure to protect these cells from weather events and to ensure that the panels have a long and extensive lifetime. Each module also has a junction box on the back, which is shown at the very bottom of the screen. And that's where all of the modules get wired together, and that's what forms your solar array. Okay, so here we'll talk about system components. So the first is the module or the array, and the racking is what connects your array to your roof. And so all racking will vary based on roof type. But as you can see here in this picture, the panels are being mounted onto a pitched asphalt shingle roof, which is a very common roof type. In this example, the installer would make a penetration into the roof and drill down actually all the way to the rafters in order to make a secure connection. But they do use some sealant and flashing and other safety mechanisms at these connection points to make sure that there are no roof leaks, and also to make sure that everything is done to ensure the integrity of your roof and your new system. This here is a standing seam metal roof, which is a really nice option for solar, and I've seen it becoming more and more popular here in West Virginia as well. These are great because you can actually clamp onto the seams without having to make a penetration into your roof. So it makes the installation really simple. These metal roofs also have an extended lifespan of about 50 years, whereas in comparison, the standard asphalt shingle roof lasts about 30 years. And you can also mount onto flat commercial roofs as well. And there are like ballast or weighted rackings and mounting systems in that case. And so basically there's an installation solution for almost any roof type. But now let's discuss what a good roof is for solar. So the most ideal scenario is if your roof meets these 3 criteria that I'm going to discuss here. And so being in the Northern Hemisphere, our most ideal roof orientation is due south. And so a roof facing due south with no shade and that will receive most of a location solar resource. And so that is ideal. It'll receive the most hours of sunlight in the day over the course of the year throughout the seasons. East and west facing roofs are still pretty workable. They'll capture more than 80% of the available resource depending on the roof's pitch. And so one thing I will say is that if your roof is very steep, sometimes there are adders for really steep roofs because the installers have to get up there and have to, be extra safe and very cautious. And so it does make things a little bit different. Another thing about roof, what makes a roof ideal for an installation is little or no shading. And so ideally we want these panels to be free from shade between 9 and 3. And if you have a little bit of shading in the mornings and the evenings, that's okay. Solar panels are more efficient than ever, and it's really a case-by-case basis. So one of the things that we do when you join the co-op is take a look at your roof using some mapping software and check out the orientation of your roof, do a shade analysis, and let you know whether it looks like a good fit for solar, excuse me. I'll also say that microinverters, which is another piece of technology that we'll cover in an upcoming slide, they help mitigate power loss from shading as well. Another consideration is having enough space to mount the panels. And so these modules are pretty big, and a large roof can lose a decent amount of mounting space if there are dormers or vents present. And so our recommendation is at least 200 or 250 square contiguous feet of unobstructed roof space. You can still mount an array around these obstacles, but it will be at a cost of efficiency for your system. And so another consideration is roof age. I guess it's not only 3 criteria, it's also 4. If the roof is has 10 years of its life left, then we really recommend placing your roof before you go solar. At a minimum, the roof should last as long as it takes for the system to pay for itself. And so, for example, if your asphalt shingle roof is less than half of its lifetime old, so if you had 10 years on a 30-year roof, that would be okay. This is a really important consideration because it will cost money to have the installer come back out and uninstall your system and then reinstall it. And it's just really good to consider that and make sure that, you make any necessary changes or before you go solar to your roof. So if your roof is not particularly well situated or suited rather for solar, a ground mount system is also a good alternative if you have the preference for it or if you have the space. And they're pretty common here in West Virginia. Folks tend to have a bit more land around their homes. But I will mention there are some trade-offs. And so some of the pros is that you're not limited by pitch and orientation of your roof. You can situate them to maximize production efficiency. And they'll also be a little bit more productive because there's increased air circulation around the panels, allowing them to perform better because they'll be cooler. They're also, more accessible for a solar owner for cleaning or wiping snow accumulation, although this typically isn't a problem here. In West Virginia, we get plenty of rain to wash off any debris, pollen, and dust or otherwise. And as far as the snow accumulation goes, it does slide off pretty quickly. The panels are smooth. They're also very dark. And so the snow melt is usually not much of an issue. But there are some cons to a ground mount system. They do tend to be more expensive because of additional hardware, concrete, and the conduit that it's required to get that energy from the ground mount location to the meter and to your home's electrical service panel is a cost that you will incur. Another con is that they take up space that could otherwise be used, but if you don't mind, then that's okay. And so when you do, if and when you sign up for the co-op, there's an option for you to drag and drop a pin to indicate where you'd like your install to take place. So whether it be on the roof of your home or other structures or the ground mount. And from there, we'll take a look, as I said earlier, and let you know whether or not it will be a a good fit for solar. At that time, we also ask about like how old your roof is, what the type of your roof is, and the condition as well. Okay, so now we'll talk about inverters. So I like to think of the inverter as like the brains of the operation. It's a piece of electrical equipment that is responsible for converting the DC or direct current power that your panels produce into AC or alternating current power. And that's the type of power that is used by your home's appliances and electronic devices. And so it has three main functions. The first one that I mentioned, which is the DC to AC inversion. It also has a power optimization function. So as sunlight conditions change throughout the day, inverters will calculate conditions to maximize the power yield from your system. They are also continually monitoring your system's electrical output and its connection to the local electric grid. So this makes sure that everything is working properly and that the system is appropriately integrated with the local electric grid. And it can do this because it's connected to the internet. And so another neat feature is that you can monitor your system in that way as well. And there are a couple different types of inverters. One is the traditional type, which is a string inverter. It is a piece of centralized equipment about the size of a microwave that's usually installed somewhere near your electric meter. With a string inverter, all of the modules flow into that single piece of, all of them flow into that single piece of, oh gosh, I just totally lost my train of thought. You'll have to excuse me. I'm so sorry. Okay, so let's take it back. So the traditional type, which is what we were just talking about, is this string inverter. It is a centralized piece of equipment, like I said, around the size of a microwave. That's typically near your electric meter. And so all of the modules that are linked together, that they flow into this single piece of equipment with that DC current, okay? And then they're often paired with DC optimizers, which are small pieces of equipment that go on the back of each module, and they help to balance out any differentiation in power flow at the panel level in order to optimize efficiency of your overall solar array. Another type is called a microinverter, and unlike this centralized string inverter, microinverters are a smaller piece of equipment that goes on the back of each module, and it makes the DC to AC power inversion at the module level. And so that's kind of neat as well, because it also allows you to monitor your production at the panel level as well. And so essentially they both perform the same role, just in different ways. And different installers will work with one or the other, and different applications might be better for one or the other. And so that's a conversation that you can have with your installer to get an idea about why they've made the choices that they have in a proposal that they give to you. Okay, so how does my solar connect to my electrical panel? It's a very simple connection. Typically, a solar array doesn't require any modification to a home's electrical service panel. But if you do have a very old home with a small service panel, you may need to upgrade and or add a sub panel. This is something that your installer will check out when they come out to do a site visit. And that from there, you can discuss what kind of options are available to wire in the array to your home's electrical service panel. So that's to say that if you do need an upgrade or sub panel, you will know the cost ahead of time. You won't be blinded by any outside cost. And so it's also important to talk about terminology here. And so there are a few different terms that are really useful to become familiar with and that you'll hear frequently when you're considering going solar. And when we talk about solar panels, we usually talk about them in terms of size. And so instead of saying we have 12 panels, we talk about them in watts, kind of like a light bulb. And so 1 kilowatt is the equivalent of 1,000 watts. And watts is a term that describes energy production capacity of your solar module. And so kilowatt hours is a term that's used to describe the relationship of energy consumption over time. And so you'll see your energy consumption reflected on the monthly bill that you receive from your electric utility in terms of kilowatt hours. Alrighty, so now we can put it all together. So usually when we're talking about solar PV or photovoltaics, we're generally talking about grid-tied solar. And so that means that you will be tied into the local electric grid and continue to receive electricity from your utility provider. And the solar that's on your roof will help offset that annual electric cost for you. And so DC power is produced at the array. It flows through the inverter and is converted to alternating current. That alternating current travels to your electrical service panel where you're able to use your home's appliances and electronic devices. And so it flows through your panel and powers your home, just like the power you would receive from your electric utility company. And so when it's a really nice sunny day and you're producing more than you're using on site, the excess then flows out through number 4, which is a bi-directional electric meter, back into the local electric grid, and it actually helps to offset your neighbors and other community members' loads as well. And so this is one of the really cool ways that distributed energy changes our relationship with our energy system. So instead of passively consuming energy that's applied to us by centralized investor-owned utility companies, we're able to become producers of that resource for ourselves and our communities. And the really good news is that you will get credited for that on your electric bill. So there's a policy in place in West Virginia that's called net metering. And as I just mentioned, the meter provided by your electric utility is what's called bi-directional or two-way. This means that it will measure the amount of power that you are sending to the grid, as well as measure the amount of power that you're consuming. So at the end of the month, you'll get a bill from your utility that's describing the amount of energy you consumed from the grid, and it subtracts that amount of electricity from your solar that your panels have produced, and then you pay the difference, right? So the law requires that West Virginia utilities do this, so you can conceivably offset 100% of your annual electric consumption with on-site solar. If you produce more energy than you use in a single month, those credits roll over on a month-to-month basis. And so from one month to the next, you'll be building up a bank of credits. So imagine in the summertime when solar resources are plentiful and you're frequently producing more than you're consuming, you'll be able to build up that bank of credits and then spend down on those credits in the winter months when there are less hours of sunlight available to power your solar system. And so the installer will look at your bill to see what you consume annually, and they'll size an array to offset as much as they can to near 100%, given the space available that you have and the size of your budget. Okay, so this is just basically a summation of what we just talked about, the electricity that you use from the grid minus exported, which is what you've produced at the panel level. And then you would pay for whatever the difference is. And so many electric bills do not reflect your self-usage. And so what you produce and that's exported is what goes to the grid after your self-consumption. Okay, so what happens when the power goes out? I like to describe solar panels as producing energy, but not storing it. And so in the event of an outage and with a simple grid-tied system, you will not have backup you will not have backup power in the event of an outage. So you need batteries if you want to back up power, if you want backup power available. And so when the grid goes down, your inverter actually shuts down your solar array, and this prevents any your array from backfeeding power into the wires and into the local distribution lines. This is a safety mechanism that prevents line workers who may be working on an outage issue, and it prevents them from being electrocuted. And so your inverter senses that something's going on, the system shuts off automatically, and then it turns back on when it senses that the grid is back up and running. And so battery storage might be right for you, or you may want to pursue that option if you experience frequent and prolonged utility outages, especially if you have critical loads that you would want to maintain during an outage. This includes critical medical equipment, or like here in West Virginia, many of us have well water, and so water is absolutely a critical need. And so keeping those well pumps operational during times of a grid outage is important. And also, if you're concerned about emergency or disaster preparedness, these are all valid reasons to look into energy storage when you're thinking about going solar. And so you can learn more about battery storage at the link. We're going to drop it in the chat. It's also here on this slide. We have a downloadable guide for homeowners or for people who are just looking to learn more. It is a pretty big and complex topic, and so it's definitely something that I would invite you to delve into if this is something that you are considering or curious about. It is important to know that when the grid does go down and you're relying on battery storage, that you're not going to be able to power your whole entire home system in the way that you normally would. And so, for example, you would need to pick and choose the most critical loads in your home to connect to your battery storage. So some examples of that are your refrigerator, maybe lights and outlets, a router or cable modem. Maybe your TV is a critical load for you, but you're likely not going to be running your dishwasher or dryer. And so the point here is just really assessing what your critical needs are and just being careful with the storage that you have and selecting your loads as necessary. And so before we finish up this section and to wrap it up, I'm going to go over a few frequently asked questions, and then I'll go ahead and pause for any questions that you may have. And so when we are looking at warranties, there are three main warranties that you'd want to consider. The first is from the installer, and it's for labor and workmanship. And so it'll cover roof penetrations or damage to your home, problems with electrical work. We've seen that these warranties can range pretty widely from 1 year into the lifetime of the panels. The second is a manufacturer's warranty, which will cover the physical components like the panels and the inverter. And so these inverters are warranted typically between 10 and 15 years. They do have extendable 25-year extensions as well. Microinverters are typically warranted for around 25 years. The third type is a production warranty, and that's through the manufacturer of the panels. And so it tells you how efficient the panels are going to be over their lifetime. And so this is a really great way to compare your panels against one another, because you'll know ahead of time how they retain efficiency over time. And so solar panels today are typically warranted for 25 to 30 years by the manufacturer. And I just want to stress here that we're looking at resilient pieces of equipment that you can expect to produce power for you for decades into the future. And part of joining the co-op means that you will get clean language on those warranties, and you'll know what to expect with your system. Another consideration is homeowners insurance. So in the event of a natural disaster that results in a tree falling on your panels or your roof, your homeowners insurance will cover that. But you have to let them know ahead of time that you are going solar. You typically won't see increases to your homeowners insurance rates because of solar. But if you do go solar and they drastically increase your rates, I would encourage you to shop around for another provider. Some even offer green discounts for folks who are making energy improvements and upgrades to their homes. So in terms of maintenance for your solar system, I'm happy to report that panels are generally maintenance free. And so they do not require frequent washing or cleaning in this area of the country. And as I said, we get plenty of rainfall, and their dark and smooth nature allows the snow melt to kind of heave off pretty quickly. If you happen to live in an HOA and are considering going solar, you may have to consider some site restrictions on where you can place your system or how it looks. But we do have a solar access law here in West Virginia that does prevent HOAs from outright banning solar altogether. And so if you want to go solar and you go to your HOA board and they're concerned about anything involved in the installation process, that's a point at which Solar United Neighbors can step in and help you do some outreach and education to your board members, just to explain the benefits to their members of rooftop solar, and as well as the benefits to neighborhood property values. So likewise, if you live in a historic district, you might need a review from your historic review board, and probably would need to obtain a permit from them. That's another time where we can provide resources and support as well. And so now I will take a brief pause and see if we have any questions.
We don't have any questions in the chat, Leah.
Okay, great. We'll move right along then. Okay, so now we're going to get into the second piece of this puzzle, and probably one that you're really interested in and want to know about, and that's solar economics. And so we're going to dive into that and talk about how solar can benefit you financially and what it looks like.
Leah, I would stop you for a second. We have a question here.
Yes.
Have you helped entire HOA communities go solar?
We haven't done that here in West Virginia, but I do believe that other state programs have helped entire HOA. Like in Colorado, for example, our Colorado state director has led HOA focused solar cooperatives. And so we do have a model for that. And with this co-op, we have been in touch with some HOAs just to let them know that we're going solar, and I'm open to it. Definitely open to coming through and talking to your HOA board and also members, and making sure that folks have adequate education around what our co-op process looks like and resources as well. Alrighty. Okay, so here we'll get into some solar economics. Solar is a great investment. It still has a little bit of a reputation, I think, as being outside of an average person's price range. But as you can see here, costs have dropped over 73% since 2010. And so it's more affordable than ever, and it's a better investment than ever. There's also a federal tax credit that's in place, and we'll talk more about that in a little bit. But right here is an example pricing chart based on our average recent co-op pricing, which is $2.71 a watt. And so this chart describes the cost breakdown for these general system sizes. And an average system in West Virginia is between 4 and 6 kilowatts. And so your system will be based on your specific needs and budget, but this range gives you an idea of what you'd be seeing up front and what it would cost after the tax credit. And then every year, as you save money on your electric bill, how you're recouping on that investment. And so taking a look at the first column here, as I mentioned earlier, solar is priced by the watt and not by the panel. And so when you get an installer's proposal or contract, you'll see the system in terms of kilowatts. And so, okay, back to the 4 kilowatt example. If you're being asked to pay $10,840 for 4,000 watts or for a 4 kilowatt system, then the system is being priced at $2.71 a watt by the installer. And right now we have a 26% federal tax credit. And so when you subtract, which is the total 26% of the total project cost, and when you subtract that out, the net cost of that system would be around $8,000. And then you can see the electricity savings on year 1, and then we'll go ahead and jump to year 10. Because given our current electricity rates, we generally see about a 10 to 12 year payback time for that initial investment. And then after that, you're just making basically free energy for yourself for another couple of decades into the future. And you can see that over 25 years, you're going to be saving a lot of money, potentially tens of thousands of dollars by going solar on your home. You can see that the savings actually do scale with the size of your system as well. And as our electricity prices continue to increase, you're going to be saving even more money by essentially locking in the cost of your electric bill. And so this is a turnkey operation. These prices are holistic, so they include everything about the system. And so the installer will pull all the paperwork and permits you may need to make sure that you're up and running with your local utility and local zoning jurisdiction as well. Okay, more on the federal tax credit. It is currently decreasing. It's stepping down. I am anticipating that installations for this co-op will likely take place between Q4 of this year and Q1 of 2023. And so some members might fall on either side of this incentive step down that we see here. So we definitely encourage you to engage with the installer and be responsive so you can move quickly if that is something that you would like to do to realize the full 26% tax credit of 2022. We're letting you know this ahead of time so you're not blindsided in the future. A few other things about the tax credit is that it is income-based. It's not a deduction, nor is it refundable, but basically your next year's tax return will be reduced by the percentage that applies when your system is installed, as I said, for the total project cost. And if you don't have enough tax liability, you can roll it over multiple years. And so as you can see, and as I mentioned, this tax credit is decreasing, and there are no guarantees that it will be increased or extended. And so we're really like finding ourselves in the sweet spot of a year where you can get substantial tax credit for your array, although we are actively advocating for the income tax credit extension at the national level as well. But this is a really great time to go solar if you're thinking about it. Okay, so you can finance your solar system in a number of ways. And the first way is just the cash option. And so it's a higher upfront cost, but you really do maximize your savings with that option, although it's a difficult one to be able to pull off. So there are other options as well. We have third-party ownership and loan options, which you can learn more about at the link below, which is solarunitedneighbors.org/financing. If you are a commercial business or farm, you may be eligible for grant funding through the USDA's Rural Energy for America program, or REAP. This is a really great way to stack capital and get a significantly more savings on your system if your application is successful. Right now, the program covers 25% of total project costs. And so, they also offer combined grant and loan guarantee funding for up to 75% of total eligible project costs. And so again, if you're a commercial entity, you're welcome to follow up with me through the co-op process and let me know if you're interested. We do have internal resources and can assist you through the grant application process. Okay, there are also a few different types of loans that are common to financing a solar system. As with any loan, it is good to shop around and compare rates and fees to see what your best option might be. The home equity line of credit is a really great way. You can also refinance and also include solar. A lot of installers offer financing options as well. And the last option is co-op members have access to loans from the Clean Energy Credit Union and from Community First Credit Union as well. These are also great options because the fees are low and they are exclusively offered to co-op members. And so I'll pause there to see if anybody has any questions around solar economics or financing.
No questions in the chat yet.
Thank you. Okay, so now we're going to talk about how solar co-ops work. We did talk about, kind of the genesis of our solar co-op model earlier. Since then, we have facilitated over 330 solar co-ops around the country and have consciously developed this co-op process over time in order to achieve consistent results that benefit co-op members. And so the process consists of aggregating a number of consumers together and going through one competitively selected installer. So that way you can save money, although that's not something that we guarantee, and I will go over that in a couple of slides. But we do consistently see that by leveraging the bulk purchase campaign model, that members do achieve savings on their solar installations through economies of scale. And so we at Sun delight in the role of keeping you informed throughout the co-op process. We're here to provide technical assistance and guide you along the way, so that way you feel really good about and confident about your investment and that you're making informed decisions. Another perk to the co-op process is being able to connect with fellow solar enthusiasts in your community. And so by joining the co-op, you also become a Sun member, and that furthers your reach and broadens your impact. We at Sun will keep you informed about solar policy changes and provide you with opportunities to act on issues that are related to expanding solar access in West Virginia and beyond. And so we hope you'll join us. Now we'll take a look at the co-op process. Typically, the whole process takes place over 6 to 8 months. And so we launched on May 13th. And we are currently at step 1. So thank you for taking the time to join me tonight to come and learn about the solar co-op. You are effectively doing step 1 right now. So that's great. After we complete this info session today, you will have completed step 1. And if you're ready to become a co-op member, you can sign up online. It is completely free to join the co-op. And I want to emphasize that you are in no way obligated to sign a contract or to install solar panels by becoming a member. And so after joining the co-op, you'll receive a free roof review to see if the location that you chose is well suited for solar. And so if you eventually receive you will receive a proposal from an installer that is custom for you. Throughout the process, we will also work with our partners to spread the word and grow the co-op. And so we ask that you also share with anyone in your network who may be a home or business owner who's interested in going solar with the co-op. After we've hit a certain number of co-op members, our goal for this co-op is 50. We will move to the next step, which is selecting an installer. And this installer neutral process is a core value of Sun and is integral in our co-op process. And so we at Solar United Neighbors will issue a competitive request for proposals from solar installers on behalf of the co-op. We will then review and compile the bids and also check licensing and insurance, references, etc. And those compiled bids will be turned over to a self-selected group of volunteers within the co-op who will act as the selection committee. And so this group represents the priority values of the co-op at large, and make sure that they're represented by the installer that is selected. And so this way the co-op can choose an installer that meets the best needs and preferences of all of those who are going solar. And that's what I meant when I said that we don't guarantee that you'll save money, because the selection committee ultimately chooses who services the co-op. And this decision isn't only based on price. When you kind of like take a step back, there's a more holistic view of values to consider. And so when you join the co-op, we survey your preferences based on price, equipment quality, warranties, installer experience, and location. And so sometimes we'll see that it's equipment or quality or experience that members place more value on over the price itself. But we do consistently see 10 to 15% savings on systems with our co-op model as well. By the end of month 4, there will be a deadline to sign up for the co-op, and that happens to be August 31st. In the meantime, if you join, you'll receive your proposal that's been customized for you in your home. As I mentioned before, it'll be based on your site and your energy needs. And the way that this is gauged is when you join, you'll be asked to share a copy of your energy bill with the installer so they can take a look at your annual consumption needs. So the array in your proposal will reflect those needs and will also take into account any relevant budget considerations as well. And so over the next couple months, the installer will come out for a site visit and draw you up a contract. So money doesn't really begin exchanging hands until after the contract is signed. You are free to walk away up until that point. So it is important to stay in touch and be responsive with the installer throughout this process. So we encourage you to keep an eye out for emails, etc. And installations typically begin within a few months after signing a contract. And so most installations have, once they've been completed, we join together, and hopefully we do that in person and we celebrate. So this celebration will give us all the opportunity to meet each other, to see the impact that the co-op had in the community. We can also share stats around how many people went solar. Folks have the opportunity to share photos and geek out on their new technology and their new systems. And so it also gives us an opportunity to share about what's next for the solar movement here in West Virginia. And so we invite you, if this was good and informative for you and you're considering going solar, to take the next step and join the Tucker, Randolph, and Upshur Solar Co-op. You can do so at the link below. And we also invite you to tell your friends and neighbors about the co-op. And at this time, we are going to launch a poll to see, to gauge your interest as far as if you would be willing to help us spread the word. How would you do that?
All right, the poll is up. You should see it on your screen, and we'll just give people a few moments to answer the questions on there.
Awesome. We got a diverse diverse tactics for spreading the word. Appreciate you all for doing that. We will follow up after this webinar and make sure that you get the resources that you need to share the word about the co-op. So I just, again, wanted to thank you. Again, my name is Leah Barber, and if you have any other questions or any other follow-up that we didn't get to this evening, I will take questions right now also, but you can also shoot them to us at wvteam@solarunitedneighbors.org, and we look forward to a successful co-op.
And Leah, we got a couple questions in the chat that I don't think we covered yet. There was one from Corey. Have there been any groups that have done a ground mount setup that they share?
So that would be, that's a really great question, Corey, and it's actually something that we're working toward being able to achieve here in West Virginia, hopefully in the not too distant future. But that would mean that we have expanded access for solar here in the way of community solar, and we do not currently have community solar here in West Virginia. So keep your eye out for opportunities to engage and advocate to expand solar access in other ways, especially in the way of community solar coming up. Great question.
Yeah, that's a real common question we get. It seems really intuitive. You should be able to do it, but unfortunately, the way the regulations are written, it prohibits people from sharing the energy, which is unfortunate. Another question, also from Corey: what if folks live in neighboring counties?
Yeah, I think that we would love for you to engage with us, and that's something that we could just check with the installer. I think that, you know, if they were willing to service those needs, then it's a conversation that we could have, but I can't guarantee that at this time. Also, good question.
And that's it for the questions.
All right. Well, thanks, everybody. I hope you all have a wonderful evening, and we look forward to hearing from you soon. Take care.